as a Bills fan, I don't think psychologically or emotionally I could ever predict the Bills to win the Super Bowl. I think I'm just going to always have to predict them not to win the Super Bowl until they actually do. Hey guys, welcome to the off-season show of Football Forecast. I know usually you guys are just used to seeing the regular season show. Well, we figured out a way to give you guys football season and football news all year round. First off, make sure that you're following the Football Forecast on all social medias. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at TFB Forecast ETB. Also, make sure to be following the Empty the Bench Podcast Network on all social medias on Twitter, Instagram, and X at ETB Network. Also, make sure that you got to be following our YouTube channel at ETB Network. We're very, very close to 1,000 subscribers, so anything would help. Make sure you subscribe, share this video, and you love football. You know anybody else that loves football or loves sports in general, this would be a great channel for them. Also, make sure to be listening to us, however you may be listening to your podcast and however you may be listening to the Football Forecast show. Make sure you're listening to us on all social medias and all podcasts, and also make sure to subscribe to all of ET Network Substacks. We just had a new Substack. We got a lot of great sports. If you love baseball, we have a lot of great stuff there. If you love betting, we have a lot of great wagers. So all kinds of stuff, MMA news. So definitely subscribe into it. It's definitely worth it. It's ETB Network, Substack.com. So definitely make sure to look at that. The Football Forecast is presented by Playback. Definitely make sure you stay tuned for later in the show because we got more on that, and it's definitely going to be very interesting. You're definitely going to want to hear about that. We got a great show, and we definitely want to preview what the off-season show is going to look like. Obviously, this is a whole new thing. For the off-season show, it's going to be a little different. There's going to be no NFL games to talk about, and there's going to be no NFL games to pick. But there's going to be plenty of things to talk about, Kaynen. Obviously, there's going to be NFL free agency. We got an NFL combine. We have the NFL draft. And now with so much player mobility and so many things that change in the NFL has become like the NBA where we see so much changes, so many players going from one team to the next, so much coaching changes. It seems like there's great NFL news all year round. But yeah, we definitely have a great show this week. We got also some Justin Tucker news. We got some news with his allegations. Obviously, it just seems to be getting much worse for him. There was some head coaching hirings. There was some coordinator hirings. There was some GM hirings as well. We also are going to be breaking down potential free agents. Who are the top free agents this year? There's a lot of good ones. We have a great NFL draft class, so we got to break down who's the top NFL draft prospects in this draft class. And again, we're going to be doing team breakdowns. We're going to do an offseason breakdown of every NFL team. So we got to start at the top. So we're obviously going to be breaking down the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to be breaking down the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, who came up in the Final Four, and also the Washington Commanders. So we got plenty of news, and we definitely got to get right into it, Kaynen. And we got to start right at the top with the unfortunate news of Justin Tucker. It looks like it's gotten to the point where the NFL now is going to have to start to investigate what's going on with Justin Tucker. Now, right now, it's just been allegations, and there was just seven more massage parlors and therapists out there who are, accusing Justin Tucker of foul play and sexual misconduct. And it looks like things are only getting worse for him, Kaynen. And now the NFL has to step in and do their own investigation. And in my opinion, this seems like Deshaun Watson all over again.
Yeah, Anthony, I was just about to say the same thing. I think it's going to be a complete rerun of the Deshaun Watson situation. I'm really not sure how he's going to come back from this because the way Deshaun Watson was received was not very welcome. I don't know if you remember that first game he appeared, they're all chanting stuff. So I think this is going to be a big hump for Justin Tucker to get over.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the thing is, that's not helping him is he's a kicker and he's older and he's coming off of a terrible season. So, I mean, the Ravens were probably already considering like, hey, maybe we got to look at a young kicker anyways before these allegations even came out. Now with these allegations, I mean, there's no point. I mean, these allegations and what you're going to have to deal with and the backlash is now going to outweigh his performance on the football field. And, for Justin Tucker, now with the league getting involved, I wonder if he's going to get put on the commissioner's exempt list or if eventually they just decide to suspend him. But either way, I think the Ravens, if this continues, I think they're probably going to draft a kicker this offseason or maybe sign one. And they're probably going to let Justin Tucker go. And it's unfortunate because growing up in, the early 2010s to, obviously just recently, Justin Tucker was probably the best kicker in the league. And he's made so many clutch kicks. And I remember him making 65, 66-yard game winners like it was nothing. And, the last couple of years he's been struggling. And I'm not sure if these allegations, are true or not. I wasn't there and they are allegations. And, you're innocent until proven guilty. But he has been struggling. And it's not like kickers really fall off at the age of 30. I mean, kickers are supposed to be good until their 40s. They're not getting hit like normal players. So for Justin Tucker to be so off, it seemed like there was something mentally there, and he seems like he wasn't mentally confident the last few years, and maybe it's because he knew these allegations were possibly going to come out. But like I said, he doesn't seem like the same player he is anymore, and I think the Ravens should cut him.
Yeah, I think kicking is a lot of mental game, and like you said, with that stuff weighing on his mind, I think that might have been a contribution to what was like starting his downfall there and his off play.
Yeah, and the draft is stacked with NFL kickers coming up. So there's a lot of NFL prospects at that position, and Mel Kiper was bragging about that position. So if there was ever a year for the Baltimore Ravens to move on, it would be this year because there's definitely a lot of kickers they could draft.
Yeah.
But obviously, speaking of the NFL offseason, something that NFL teams are definitely happy about, the NFL salary cap got a huge increase this offseason. The salary cap is projected to be somewhere between $277.5 million to maybe even as high as $281.5 million. That's looking like a potential $22 to $26 million increase from what we saw in 2024. That's absolutely insane. And it's like what Joe Burrow was saying. The salary cap's only going up, and everybody at this point, could just keep all their players, and the salary cap doesn't exist. And honestly, Kaynen, I think this stems from the TV deals. I think, from their deal with YouTube TV, with NFL Sunday Ticket, with all those, single NFL games going to Netflix and Amazon Prime, the NFL is just a money machine. And now, they're trying to even expand this season to make even more money. But I think now with these new TV deals and the increase in popularity, now we're starting to see more of an overseas viewership in the NFL with all the games that they're doing overseas. So I think all in all, all that's increasing the salary cap. And I mean, it's great for NFL teams, but it's even greater for NFL players.
Yeah, this way, more money will go to the players. It'll be more incentive to play hard and go out there and bust your ass for your team because they're paying you so much. And maybe we'll even get to see some like duos or combinations of players put together with this new salary cap that we wouldn't have before.
Yeah, the only thing that scares me a little bit about it is, and a trending topic right now is the NBA culture, and they're saying a lot of NBA players are taking nights off or plays off or not being fully committed and kind of going through the motions, and people like Brian Windhorst are blaming it on the increase in salaries and the fact that they're having too much power. Now, what I'm not hoping is I hope the NFL players with the increase in salaries, I hope that they don't get paid so much money to the point where they start doing the same thing as NBA players. One thing is I think the NFL culture is a lot different. It's definitely more about the team and it's more about the shield. So I don't think that would happen, but it's definitely got to be something that you got to consider. But now if Roger Goodell and the NFL team is considering expanding the season 2 more weeks, where each team would play 18 games and then you would have 2 buys. If you have 2 more NFL weeks, I mean, we're going to see the salary cap even skyrocketed some more. And we're pretty soon, before we're going to start seeing, $300 million salary caps. And we're going to be pretty soon to start seeing $70, $80 million a year players. But like I said, we also had some hiring news. one hiring that I did not see coming, a guy that I didn't think had no business being in the NFL anytime soon. We have Brandon Staley, who is brought back in the NFL and who was hired by the New Orleans Saints. And we also have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who finally got the GM. Now, usually you see the GM hired first, and it's surprising that it took them this long to get the GM, but they did get James Gladstone. Now, first, I'll start off with James Gladstone. Now, before the hire, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't know much about him, but looking into him, he was the top guys for the Rams scouting department. And when you do look at how the Rams have drafted, they've been dominating the draft. And for a team that traded a lot of their draft picks early on and then didn't have all these great draft picks, they've been drafting so well. And you look at guys like Brandon Fisk and Jaden Verse. I mean, the secondary players this team's drafted as well. Kobe Turner. I mean, they lost Aaron Donald, and their defensive line obviously may not be as good because Aaron Donald's the GOAT, but their defensive line was still dominant, one of the strengths of their team, and that's just, a compliment to their scouting department. So, I'm not going to say, he's going to be great or going to be bad because we honestly don't know. But, given his track record and what he did in terms of drafting, I mean, he did as great as you could possibly do in terms of drafting for the Los Angeles Rams, and the Los Angeles Rams are definitely going to wish he was still there. In terms of Brandon Staley, I thought this guy should be coaching college at best. I mean, what this guy did to Justin Herbert and ruining his confidence and what he did with the Chargers, I mean, you're a defensive coach, but your defense sucks. I mean, it absolutely makes no sense to me. And you had great players on defense. You had Khalil Mack. I know Joey Bosa was hurt here and there, but you had great players, Derwin James, and the defense sucked. And then you had your one playoff appearance. You absolutely collapsed a 28-0 lead against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I think, maybe that has to do with why, Herbert's confidence in the playoffs may be shaky. I think Herbert's dealing with a little bit of a PSD from Brandon Staley. But what were your thoughts about these hirings, Kaynen?
Yeah, I agree with the whole Herbert thing. It's really hard to get confidence and win games when you don't completely trust the guy that's calling the plays for you and running the whole show. So I agree with that. I'm not really sure about that pickup for the Saints there. But what was interesting is him and Kellen Moore coached together in Los Angeles, where Staley was the head coach and Moore was the coordinator. So this time around, they're switching roles. It might turn out to be a better outcome. You really can't tell until it happens. And with Gladstone, something I thought was really interesting, Anthony, was he was involved with a high school program in St. Louis when the Rams found him, I believe. And like you said, he turned out to be an awesome college recruiter or college scout. So it'll be interesting to see what he could do for the Jaguars, especially because he's so young and they have that young coach now. So I'm pretty excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, those are some great points. And yeah, you're absolutely right, Kaynen. I agree with everything you said. Obviously, it's funny for Brandon Staley. Obviously, he's back in the NFL, but I mean, that's got to be kind of an ego crusher. I mean, the guy that you were the boss of is now your boss.
Yeah.
And if it does work out, I mean, that's going to be kind of funny because it just goes to show you that you just weren't a good leader and you had to be demoted. But we'll see. Brandon Staley was a good coordinator and he was made the head coach of the Chargers at one point for a reason. I think the Saints are a tough job, to be honest. Out of all the head coaching jobs, they're probably the toughest one to turn around. They have a tough salary cap. We'll obviously break them down in the later weeks when we talk about the Saints, but they're going to be a tough team to rebuild. And if Kellen Moore can figure it out, I mean, give them coach of the year now because that's one of the toughest jobs to turn around. And they have a lot of work ahead of them. Obviously, we got to start talking about the NFL free agencies. We got the top free agents, and there's some good ones. We obviously got to start off with T. Higgins from the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, I feel like the Cincinnati Bengals are going to do whatever they can to keep him. Joe Burrow has been adamant that he doesn't care what they have to do. He wants them to be able to keep, obviously, they're ready to re-sign Burrow, but he wants them to be able to re-sign Jamar Chase and re-sign T. Higgins. Now, you're talking, that's a lot of money to commit to three players. I mean, when you talk about a guy like Joe Burrow, I mean, all those guys deserve the money. But when you look at a guy like Joe Burrow, who's making, nearly $55 million a year, you're looking at like a guy like Jamar Chase, who wants almost $40 million a year. And you're looking at a guy like T. Higgins, who, according to Pro Football Focus, his projected contract, he's looking at $28 million a year. If you re-sign all of those players, I mean, how are you going to be able to build any defense or any offensive line around Joe Burrow? I mean, honestly, I feel like you're better off letting T. Higgins walk and then, re-sign Chase and then use the T. Higgins money to build the line and build the defense. But if Joe Burrow and them are really adamant on keeping the player, it's going to come at a cost. When you look at the other free agents, Kayden, I mean, we got Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs. He's one of the best guards in football, and the Chiefs are going to have a tough time re-signing him, so he's got a good chance of hitting the open market. Another guy that's going to be probably hitting the open market is Javon Holland. He's been one of the best safeties in football for the Miami Dolphins. He kind of had a setback down year this year, but overall his body of work has been great. I don't know if the Miami Dolphins are going to be able to re-sign him, but he's one of the top free agents, and he's projected to get almost $20 million a year. You obviously look at Chris Godwin. He's been a great receiver for the Bucs. The Bucs want to re-sign him, but that's going to be tough. He's going to be looking at $20 million a year as well. You got Khalil Mack, who even though he's a little older, he's still been dominant over the last 2 seasons. So he's a guy that's going to be out there. You got DJ Reed, who, he had his injuries, but when he plays, sometimes he may be the better corner over Sauce Gardner at times. So he's a good player, and I think he'll hit the open market. You got the Buffalo Bills' Amari Cooper. Now, he's got a lot of injuries, and he's not looking too good, and he's going to command a decent amount of money, probably $15 to $18 million a year. So I'm not sure if the Bills will be able to afford that, so he might hit the open market. You got Ronnie Staley. He's a really good tackle as well, and he's going to be commanding $20 million a year. So not sure if the Ravens are going to be able to re-sign him, and with that running game, you're going to want that great offensive line. So he's going to be one of those top guys as well. And then you look at Sam Darnold. He's probably the most marketable free agent and the biggest name. I mean, for a guy that had a huge breakout season, he's going to command a lot of money. And, obviously the Vikings may want to just franchise tag him, let McCarthy recover for another year, and then let Darnold leave the other year. But, teams like, the Las Vegas Raiders with Pete Carroll and other teams like Indianapolis Colts are going to be in on him. And if he hits the open market, he could be looking at $40 to $50 million a year contract. And then finally, you got Josh Sweat from the Eagles. He had a tremendous Super Bowl with 2.5 sacks, and I don't think the Eagles are going to be able to re-sign him either. But he's going to be one of the top free agents too, Kaynen. And, what are your thoughts about those guys, Kaynen? And are there some other guys that I didn't mention that you're thinking about as well?
Yeah, so I love the thing he said about Sweat. He was a key contributor in the Super Bowl. Put the pressure on his teammates as well. Those are big names I'm noticing in free agency, which would be terrible for the Eagles to lose with Mekhi Becton and Zach Baum. I feel like those guys were like the heart of the team. Those guys put it all every night. It'd be terrible to see them go. But some other names I was thinking of, some running backs. Najee Harris from Pittsburgh. He's up for free agency. I'm not really sure if he's going to leave, but that would be very interesting because he's an awesome back. And the other running back I was thinking of is Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is just a workhorse. He would be an awesome part to any team. He'd get you 2-3 yards consistently. He might not break out the big runs anymore, but he'd be an awesome pickup for a team that needs a running back.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Kaynen. I'm really glad you brought up a guy like Aaron Jones. I mean, he's kind of like the forgotten running back in the NFL, and he's been just consistently great. I mean, his whole career. I know he has some injury issues here and there, but he was a huge factor for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, he came in and was, kind of one of the key cogs in their offense. And I feel like given his age, he's probably not going to be a guy that's going to get a lot of money. Older running backs don't get paid a lot. So I feel like if it's probably in everybody's best interest for him just to return to the Minnesota Vikings. He played pretty good there. They could probably get him back for cheap. So I think that would be a mutual deal to bring him back on a 1-year deal cheap and kind of just run him back for another season. Obviously, we got the NFL free agents, but we can't, go without talking about the top NFL draft prospects. And obviously, everybody's going to talk about the household names, but there's plenty of good prospects in this draft. There's honestly, Kaynen, I think 4 guys in this draft who have first overall type potential. You obviously got the do-it-all guy in Travis Hunter, who could pretty much make an argument as the best corner and the best receiver in the draft. You got Shador Sanders, who's the most accurate quarterback in the draft, and he's just so poised in the pocket. You got Cam Ward, who's just got insane arm talent and could just make any throw in the book and could put a team on his back. He does have accuracy issues, but in terms of the wow factor, he's got it. And then you also got to mention Abdul Carter. I mean, Abdul Carter is looking like a potential generational pass rusher, and most of these generational pass rushers that come out, like Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa, turn out to be pretty good. This guy played at the same school as Micah Parsons, wore the same number 11, and pretty much plays the same way and is built similar. So, I mean, Abdul Carter is basically another Micah Parsons. So you got to look at those top four guys. And what are your thoughts on those top four guys in this NFL draft, Kaynen?
Yeah, so one name that really stood out to me was Abdul Carter, and Anthony, you hit it right on the head. Those edge rushers, they could bring an immediate impact, and it could be a complete game changer to a defense. I mean, just giving the quarterback like a second less time in the pocket can completely change a read, throw it in coverage. So having someone like that on, I don't know, a team it's not doing so hot defensively. There's a number of them. You can pick whoever. That could be a real game changer, like I said, and sway the whole year for them, maybe. A name that I forget if you mentioned that I like, Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty, he completely took over college football last year. I know you're talking about Travis Hunter. He edged him out for the Heisman, but I think Genty deserved that. He just had a phenomenal year, carried the team pretty much single-handedly, and what a beast. I think that guy could be a real game changer early on, too, in his career. So.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Ashton Genty. I mean, I know Boise State didn't play against a lot of great teams, or played in a good conference. But they did play against Oregon, who was one of the top teams, and Ashton Gentry did good against them. And, Ashton Gentry didn't have a lot of great players around him and really had to carry that team. And he nearly broke Barry Sanders' college football single-season rushing record. That guy's awesome. And when I spoke about edge rushers being great coming out of the draft, most of those top running backs who come out in the draft turn out to be really good as well. You look at a guy like Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, most of those guys turn out well. And it looks like Ashton Gentry is another one of those generational running backs. The only problem is running backs, for some reason, and it's unfair, they get devalued in the NFL draft. And it seems like ever since Saquon Barkley went second overall, the running backs have been dropping. And we did see Bijan Robinson, who I think went as high as 8. But for some reason, the running backs haven't been getting respect. Now, I know since this offseason where we had all these great running backs who left their teams and had success like Barkley and Josh Jacobs, I think the NFL running back position has been brought back. And I think the value of the running back is bigger than it's been in a long time. And I think now with the NFL teams who like to play the two high safeties, I think the NFL teams realize the best way to combat that is not throw the ball, is to just run the ball down through the middle. And that's why I think you've seen this resurgence with the run game in the NFL. And that's why running backs are more valuable than they ever are. That's why last year all the teams who lost great running backs, kind of struggled a little bit. And the running backs, or the teams that signed those running backs, had great success with them. I mean, look at Tennessee. They were terrible without Derrick Henry. And look what he did for the Baltimore Ravens. So same thing with the Giants. So, I mean, I think running backs are more valuable now. And I know people are saying, oh, Ashton Gentry can't go top 10 because he's a running back. Well, I think right now more than ever, he definitely should be a top 10 pick. And if anything, maybe he should be closer to a top 5 pick. There's some other great players in this draft as well that I want to mention before we move on. We got Mason Graham from Michigan, who basically came right in as a freshman and dominated as a defensive lineman. And to see someone do that at the University of Michigan is really impressive. You don't see offense or defensive linemen dominate at a young age because that's a position that involves strength. And that usually takes time to develop. But he came right in as an 18, 19-year-old freshman and dominated. You got Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan, who pretty much did the same thing at corner. Pretty much came right in and dominated at the position and shut down everybody. People are worried about his physical traits, saying that he's probably not going to run a super fast 40, but at the end of the day, the guy knows how to shut down receivers, and I think he's one of the best. You got Taktora McMillan, who's one of the top receivers in the draft from Arizona. He's pretty much a Mike Evans clone. He's like 6'4", 6'5". He's probably going to run a 4.5 40. You just throw it up to him, he's going to come down with it. And then the last two guys I want to mention is Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. Now, obviously, he's not Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers may be the greatest college tight end I've ever seen. But Tyler Warren's a really close second, and I feel like any team that gets him is going to get a Pro Bowl level tight end in year one. Tyler Warren absolutely dominated and was one of the most valuable players in all of college football, and he lined it up at running back, fullback, tight end, receiver, even at quarterback at times for Penn State, and he did it all. And the last guy I want to mention is Jalen Walker. I know he's a little undersized for edge rusher, but I've seen him absolutely dominate games at the edge rusher position for Georgia. And I think he's got to be a guy that's got to be considered for the top 5, top 10 NFL draft position. And he's got to be considered for the second best edge rusher outside of Abdul Carter. I know some guys like the big pass rushers, but I think this guy can't be dismissed. And, even though he's a little small, wherever team he goes to, he's going to be a 10-plus sack guy. And was there anybody else, Kaynen? I know we also have Luther Burden from Missouri, who's a great receiver, very explosive. I mean, this draft is stacked. I mean, we got great defensive linemen, great edge rushers. I mean, the only position this draft is kind of a little weak on is probably quarterback.
Yeah, like you said, besides Shedeur and Cam Ward, and I just want to touch on what you said about his accuracy. You said it can be poor at times, and I completely agree with that. He has some issues with that. But his explosiveness and his ability to make a play, I think, can overshadow that or overcome that and really make up for either accuracy or poor decision making, to be able to extend the play, rush down the field, rush out of the pocket. That puts points on the boards, and that can't be overlooked. That's about it.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Kaynen. I think that's going to be the debate all offseason between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I think it's going to be, do you want the boom or the bust? I feel like Cam Ward has obviously a much lower floor than Shedeur Sanders. I think if you get Shedeur, you're almost guaranteed to have a B-level quarterback. You may not be guaranteed to ever have, a Josh Allen level quarterback, but you're definitely guaranteed to have at least a B-level quarterback. I think with Cam Ward is the exact opposite. I think with Cam Ward, you can either get a Will Levis or you can get a Jordan Love. And I just think that's the position you're in. So it's either do you want the guy with the safest floor, a guy that not going to get you fired, but may not be able to get you, a Super Bowl win, but maybe it'll get you to the playoffs. Or do you want the guy in Cam Ward who, he may, turn out to be a bust and get you fired, but man, if he works out, he's going to win your Super Bowl. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're playing for. And I can definitely see why teams would want to decide to go with Cam Ward over Shedeur Sanders. In my opinion, I like Shedeur. I go with Shedeur Sanders. I think he's too accurate and too good of a pocket passer. I think if you get a good offensive line around him with some speedy receivers, I really think he could dominate. When we look at the quarterback position outside of those guys, I mean, it's pretty blank. I mean, we got a lot of guys who have a lot of question marks. You got Jalen Milroe, who may have the highest ceiling of any quarterback, but, man, he probably has the lowest floor. I mean, the guy can't make a 5-yard pass to save his life. But just as an athlete and as a tools, I mean, the arm strength, I mean, if he could put it all together, I mean, he could be a great quarterback. But at this point, he just hasn't improved enough as a passer, and that's why he won't be a first-round pick. You got Quinn Ewers, who sometimes struggles with his deep ball accuracy, and he has a tough time staying healthy with his small stature. And then you got a guy like Jackson Dart and a guy like Tyler Shunk, who had great Senior Bowls, who are moving up in the draft. So it's going to be interesting to see how this quarterback position goes. But right now, Ken, it seems like it's the two guys and then everybody else.
Yeah. And I'm glad he brought up Jackson Dart. I completely forgot about him. He was awesome this year. Loved watching him play. He made amazing plays. So it'll be cool to see him potentially, like you said, move up the draft board and land on the team.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And the thing is, he's got a little bit of mobility to him, and he's real accurate. And out of all those quarterbacks, I mean, besides the top two, he seems like the guy who probably has the least amount of questions. The Football Forecast is presented by Playback. Watching sports is fun, but it's more fun with others. We spend way too much time watching it alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, from repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Now back to the show. Now that we brought up, who the top draft picks and the top free agents are, now we can start doing our team breakdowns and figure out where some of these guys may be going. We got to start off with the Super Bowl champion, the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have an interesting offseason. Obviously, they have the least amount of pressure. They just won the Super Bowl. But now they're going to be the hunted. Every team now is going to want to, give the Eagles their best shot. And there's a reason why it's super hard to repeat in the NFL because, especially in the salary cap era, when you win, everybody wants your head coaches and your assistants. So you lose a lot of assistant coaches. You usually lose a lot of NFL players because now once they got their rings, it's time for them to go get their money and get paid. So they're not going to take a hometown discount at this point. So, but the Eagles seem like they're poised and primed to continue their success. And that's why they've been to 2 Super Bowls now within the last 3 seasons. When I look at the Philadelphia Eagles in their offseason, they got about, according to Over the Cap, they got about $19.5 million in salary cap. But they have a lot of big time free agents. And you mentioned a couple of them earlier, Kaynen. I mean, we got Zach Bond. I mean, you can make an argument Zach Bond was maybe the first or second best inside linebacker in all of football this year. And he was one of the catalysts of the teams. And I think since inside linebackers don't get paid a lot of money, I think he would be a good candidate for the Eagles to be able to re-sign. You look at a guy like Josh Sweat, pass rushers get paid a lot of money, and he did have a great Super Bowl. But I feel like with the Philadelphia Eagles having Nolan Smith, having Jackson Hunt, and I think they're probably going to spend one of their top draft picks on an edge rusher, I feel like Josh Sweat they probably won't be able to keep. But that's going to be a top free agent they're going to lose. They're also probably going to lose one of their good defensive tackles, Milton Williams. Now, Milton Williams was their number 2 defensive tackle alongside Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter is their all-pro. But they do got a guy behind Milton Williams and Jordan Davis, who they drafted in the first round, who, when he plays, is a beast as well, and he's primed for a breakout year. And I think what they're going to do is let Milton Williams go to free agency and get paid, and I think Jordan Davis will come in as the number 2 defensive tackle to replace him. But that's another big-time free agent they're going to lose. You also got Brandon Graham, who's probably going to either retire or move on, but he seems to be past his prime, so that won't be a huge loss, just some depth that they will lose. Oren Burks, who's a good depth linebacker, they're probably going to lose him. They're probably going to lose one of their depth corners as well, and Isaiah Rodgers. And then, like you mentioned earlier, Mekhi Becton. He's one of their good guards, and the Philadelphia Eagles, they're predicated on their offensive line. That's what makes everything work for them, and they obviously have to keep all their offensive linemen. So I think they're probably going to re-sign Becton. They're probably going to re-sign Vaughn, but they're probably going to lose their other free agents. And then they have the 32nd pick in the draft. They're definitely going to need an edge rusher, so they're probably going to spend one of those top picks on that. They could probably use another wide receiver to go along with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. They really haven't been able to get a consistent guy to go alongside them, and sometimes those guys get hurt. So I think it makes sense for them to get another receiver. And then one last thing I'll say is they could probably use another corner. I know Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were great rookies, but Darius Slay's going to be 34, 35 years old. So I think eventually they're going to need another outside corner to go along with those 2 young guys. But what are your thoughts on the Philadelphia Eagles offseason, Kaynen?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think they need to retain their big 2 free agents, Becton and Bond. It's unfortunate they can't keep Sweat, but like you said, with guys like Carter and Smith on the line, you can kind of do without them for the most part and clear up some cap space to improve some other parts of your defense. So that would be interesting to see how they go from there. I just can't stress enough on Becton, though. The best offensive line in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was such an important piece. And we've seen what offensive lines can get teams. The teams that struggle the most are the teams that have poor offensive lines and allow pressure and stuff to run. So I think if they could keep those 2 guys and everyone else stays healthy, there's no reason we can't see them in the Super Bowl again. Now, do I think they're going to win? Like you said, it's way too hard to repeat. I can't see them doing that, especially with everyone going in for them. So it'll be an interesting season for the Eagles to see what they come up with.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about in a few later topics a division rival of theirs who looks like they're going to be improving and looks like that team would be able to give them some trouble. But before we get to that team, we have to talk about the team that the Philadelphia Eagles beat in the Super Bowl, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. They got a real crucial offseason, and they're kind of like in a transitional period. We've seen them in a transitional period before when they lost to Joe Burrow in the AFC Championship game. Obviously they were coming off of back-to-back season losses where they came up just short. They lost in the Super Bowl to Tom Brady, and then they lost in the AFC Championship to Joe Burrow. And then they ended up trading Tyreek Hill, and everybody was like, "Oh well, Kansas City Chiefs aren't going to be the same anymore. You can't win with just Travis Kelce." Well, what they did was they let Tyreek Hill go so that they could build up a great offensive line and then a great defense. Well, now I feel like we're in another transitional period to where they need offensive line again. Travis Kelce's starting to get a little older. Some of those defensive players that they were able to draft and bring in now are going to want to get paid. And over the next 2 years, they're not going to be able to keep all those guys. So now I feel like the Kansas City Chiefs now are going to go through, their second transitional period in the Pat Mahomes era. So we're getting ready to start, potentially the third part of this Kansas City Chief dynasty. The first thing we got to talk about is, what the hell is Travis Kelce going to do? He's talking about, whether he's going to retire, whether he's not going to retire. The Chiefs also ultimately gave him a deadline. He's got a date in March. So he's got a couple of weeks to decide what he wants to do. He obviously doesn't have to play. I mean, the guy's dating Taylor Swift, and whether you like her or not, obviously, dating Taylor Swift gives you a lot of responsibilities, puts you a lot of in the limelight a lot, and it definitely distracts you a lot. Obviously, he's got his podcast with his brother Jason Kelce, which is obviously very popular, and he's probably making just as much money from doing that podcast. And that's something that he could probably do post NFL career. And he's got a lot of other avenues as well. And I mean, you look at a guy who's already won 3 Super Bowls. He's already one of the greatest tight ends of all time. And he did look like in the Super Bowl, he didn't have much left. But I honestly got a gut feeling that he's going to run it back one more season. He's probably going to come back and give the Chiefs one more run. But when I look at the Chiefs offseason as a whole, I mean, they got about almost $8 million in cap space according to Over the Cap. But like we said, they got Trey Smith, their all-pro guard and free agent. Don't think they're going to be able to re-sign him. You got Nick Bolton, their linebacker. I think since linebackers don't get paid a lot of money, they'll probably be able to re-sign him, but that's going to take up a lot of their salary cap. You got DeAndre Hopkins, who's a little on the older side. They're probably going to let him go. And you've seen Xavier Worthy broke out. And I know he's got the injury suspension, but you will get Rashee Rice back next year. So Hopkins is probably gone. Trayshawn Warren, their second best defensive tackle. They're probably not going to be able to afford him. So the guy that plays alongside Christian Jones is probably gone. They're probably going to not be able to keep Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown didn't really play that good when he did come back from his injury, so that's not a huge loss. Justin Reed, their safety, they'll probably be able to get him back on a cheap deal. So I think they'll probably be able to keep Bolton and Reed, but they're probably going to lose Trey Smith and everybody else. They do have the 31st pick in the draft, and when I look at their needs, they definitely need line. I mean, they definitely need some tackle help. Their tackles right now are atrocious. I mean, interior offensive line's been great, but their offensive tackles have been so bad that they had to move their great interior lineman outside. So they definitely need tackles. Because they're going to lose Trey Smith now, they're going to need another interior lineman, so they need tackle and probably another guard. They definitely need another receiver because obviously you're going to lose Brown. You're probably going to lose Hopkins. Rice is going to be suspended and injured, and Worthy is going to be in his second year. So I think you're probably going to want another receiver. You're going to have to eventually get another tight end to replace Travis Kelce. I don't think Noah Gray's the answer. You're going to need a D lineman depth to go along with Chris Jones. You can't have just Chris Jones out there, and he'll be 30 years old. And you're probably going to want to get some more edge rusher help to go alongside George Karlaftis. So I think the Chiefs need tackle, guard, receiver, tight end, some D-line help, and probably some edge rusher depth. But what are your thoughts, Kaynen, on the Chiefs offseason?
Yeah, the good thing with Kelsey's career up in there right now, if he does retire before that March 15th deadline, that gives the Chiefs $17.5 million to play with. So, like you said, they could fill those positions. What I think they need the most, wide receiver and the line. The line completely sold them in the Super Bowl. I mean, I know it's not all their fault. The Eagles defense played tremendous. They covered well. But to let up 22 pressures and 5 sacks in the Super Bowl on what everyone calls a generational quarterback that you just paid $100 million, you think they'd have more incentive to keep him safe. So I think that line needs to upgrade. I like what you said about Bolton. He's a huge piece in their defense. With him going, that'd be a huge hit. So hopefully they could retain him.
Yeah, one good thing is they do have Leo Sennel, who's a really good linebacker as well, and he's super strong. But you got to have more than just one linebacker, and him and Tranquil won't be enough if they do lose Bolton. I think that's a guy they're probably going to want to key on to keep, and they'll probably get retreat, but obviously other than that, they're not going to be able to keep Trey Smith. So the Chiefs are definitely going to have to rebuild their team through the draft. I mean, they did it once before when they lost Tyreek Hill. They're going to have to do it once again. Then when we look at, the team that the Chiefs, unfortunately beat in the AFC Championship game, we got to look at the Buffalo Bills offseason. Now, I know if you look at the Buffalo Bills offseason this time, right now the Buffalo Bills salary cap situation is right now the Buffalo Bills are negative $10 million under the salary cap. Now, when you look at that, you're like, oh, damn, they're going to have to cut players. How are they going to be able to make this work? Well, even though they're $10 million, above where they need to be, there's actually ways where the Bills can cut some money and get under the salary cap. So right now they're $10 million over. What they could do is they can cut or restructure Von Miller's contract. That could save upwards of $8 million. They could give Josh Allen a contract extension and restructure his contract. That could save potentially $10 million. They could kind of do the same thing with Ed Oliver. That would be $8 million. And they could do some with some of the other players and probably free up even more money. So when you look at this, obviously, they're not going to be able to restructure everybody. But hypothetically, they should be able to get themselves at about roughly $14 million in cap space. Now, when we look at their free agents, they got Rasul Douglas, Amari Cooper, Matt Collins, and DeMar Hamlin. I don't think they're going to re-sign DeMar Hamlin. He kind of struggled late in the season, really struggled in coverage. And I think the Bills with Cole Bishop and Tyler Rapp are going to want to move on from Hamlin, unfortunately. I know he's a locker room guy that people love, and it's going to be tough to move on from him unless they can get him re-signed at a hometown discount. But I think that they'll probably move on from him. They'll probably re-sign Matt Collins. I mean, Matt Collins really broke out this season, caught a lot of touchdowns. I think he's going to be a crucial guy that they're going to want to re-sign, and he's a guy that won't cost a lot of money either. I think Amari Cooper and Rasul Douglas now, they're probably going to end up letting those guys go. I mean, both those guys now are in their 30s. They're starting to get a little older. They both have injury issues, and they're both going to command a decent amount of money. Rasul Douglas is going to be looking at 10 to 15 million a year, and Cooper is going to be looking at 15 to 20 million a year. And I think with the Buffalo Bills in the current situation, are probably going to let those guys walk. So I think what they'll do is they'll probably re-sign Hollins, and they'll probably let all those other guys go. They do have the 30th pick in the draft, and they do have 2 second-round picks because they do have Minnesota's second-round pick. I think when I look at their needs is they definitely have to focus on defense. They definitely need a big defensive tackle. Teams have been able to run the ball, and they haven't been able to stop the run and be able to close out games. They're really undersized at the defensive tackle position. As great as Ed Oliver is, he's really undersized, and they don't really have a big, presence on the outside of him or a good defensive tackle outside of him. So I think defensive tackle is definitely their first biggest need. They definitely need a corner. Like I said, you're probably going to lose Douglas. Benford is great, but he gets hurt a lot. Tyron Johnson's a slot corner, and Kamar Elam sucks. And Jamarcus Ingram's more of a depth guy. So you're going to want to get another young developmental outside corner to go alongside Christian Benford and Tyron Johnson. They're also going to need an edge rusher. Von Miller is getting older, and he might be gone. AJ Espinosa is a free agent after next season, so you got him for only 1 more year. And you're going to need another young guy to go alongside Gregory Rousseau. I think Javon Solomon's just a depth guy, so I think they should probably draft another edge rusher to kind of be the cornerstone pairing with Gregory Rousseau. And then one final need they probably could use is they could probably use a speed receiver. They got Keenan Coleman, who's the big guy that you can just throw it up to. You got Khalil Shakir in the slot. They could use another outside receiver that can really stretch the defense and kind of take the pressure off James Cook and Josh Allen. But ultimately, I think the thing I want the Buffalo Bills to do the most is they should just trade for Myles Garrett. I think right now they should go all in. They're a few players away from the Super Bowl, and they're literally one more defensive stop away from being in the Super Bowl the last couple of years. And you had the best defensive player in football, Myles Garrett. I think that would be one or two extra defensive stops that could get him over the hump. But what are your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills offseason, Kaynen?
I love that take with Myles Garrett. I mean, taking away possessions from the offense, that's a huge way to win. You just get such a lead, you could build on it. It major huge. But for the Bills, I really think they need to find help for Josh Allen. We know him and James Cook can cut up the field with the run game behind their awesome offensive line. What he needs, like you said, is speedy wide receiver. Someone that could get that deep ball and make the big play when they need it, because they do find themselves in one possession games a lot. A guy that you could just chuck down the field and he can run and go get it. That would be huge for them, because as good as Mac Holland and Shakir are, they aren't winning Super Bowls. So I think the key for them would be to do that, get rid of DeMar Hamlin, bring in a new safety, and add another corner, like you said. I think those are major keys for them to finally take it home to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and the Bills have been so close for so many years, and I feel like it's just been their defense that's been, causing them troubles. I mean, pretty much in all their playoff losses, I mean, Josh Allen and the offense is doing their job at putting up points for the most part. It's usually their defense is not getting any stops, and usually Josh Allen pretty much has a score on every possession, and you're not going to be able to win many football games doing that. But this is a very important offseason for the Bills, and they were able to retain Joe Brady. I think that was the biggest re-signing for them. He's been very, very crucial for Josh Allen's development. He's a great coordinator. He's going to be definitely an NFL coach someday. But I'm definitely glad the Buffalo Bills were able to get back Joe Brady. And I think the Buffalo Bills are going to get over the hump, whether that's 2025 or 2026. But I think Josh Allen is going to get a Super Bowl within the next couple seasons. When we look at a team that we didn't expect to get this far, we got the Washington Commanders. Now the Washington Commanders, they have a lot of great things to be happy about this offseason. I mean, they overachieved. They went from the second worst team all the way to the Final Four and then the NFC Championship game. And now, you're one of the four best teams in the NFL, and now you got all this salary cap money. I mean, when we were talking about all these teams' breakdowns, Kaynen, and how much salary cap money they have, we were like, yeah, 7 million, 14 million. Well, how about the Washington Commanders, according to Over the Cap, sitting at over $82 million in salary cap space. And that's on top of the season they just had. And I know you're going to maybe potentially have a sophomore sub by Jaden Daniels, because that happens with most quarterbacks. But I feel like he's just so great. And the team was just going to improve so much more that I feel like that's going to negate a lot of the sophomore slump. And the Commanders look like a team that could be way better next season. So I look at what their offseason looks like is, like I said, they got plenty of money. They got a lot of decent amount of free agents. They do have Bobby Wagner, who, even though at his old age, still been one of the best linebackers in football, even just as recent as last season. You got Jeremy Shinn, who's a decent safety / linebacker. Dante Fowler, who's been a 10-sack guy. That's a huge pass rusher for him. St. Juice, who's kind of struggled a little bit here and there. He's good at times, but bad at times, and he's kind of fallen off in the depth chart. You got Zach Ertz, Dewame Brown, Zacharias, McDaniels on the offense, who are free agents. I think what they'll do is they'll probably try to get Bobby Wagner back. He's an older veteran who's not going to command a lot of money given his age. And I think he does want to continue playing. So I think Bobby Wagner probably comes back on a cheap one-year deal. I think they'll re-sign Dante Fowler since they do have the extra money. And they do have, not a great deep pass rush. So the last thing you want to do with a weak pass rush is to let your only good pass rusher go. So they're definitely going to re-sign Dante Fowler. I think they'll get back Jeremy McNichols on a cheap deal. And I think they'll re-sign one of their two receivers, not both. But then with all that salary cap money and with the 29th pick, they're going to be able to go out there and make some serious splashes. And if somehow T. Higgins doesn't get franchise tagged or re-signed by the Bengals, I mean, outside the Patriots, I think the Commanders are in prime position for T. Higgins. And if you're T. Higgins, why would you not go to the Commanders? I mean, I would definitely rather go to the Commanders, even if it's a couple $1 million a year less, than the New England Patriots, who are improving and going in the right direction, but they're not nowhere near where the Commanders are. When I look at their needs, is like I said, even with even if they can re-sign Dante Fowler, I definitely think they need edge rusher help. They definitely need some help on the back end, even though they did trade for Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline. They definitely could probably use another corner. They're probably going to need a safety, and they could probably need another receiver because I know they do have Terry McLaurin, but I think they could use another really good number 2 receiver. I mean, I think guys like DeWan Brown and Zacharias are more number 3 receivers. I think if they could get a stud number 2 receiver added to that offense, they got some other young tight ends, so I really don't think tight ends need. So I think they can use an edge rusher, safety, corner, and a receiver. But with all that money, they're going to be able to make some splashes, this offseason and add to what was already one of the 4 best teams in the NFL. What are your thoughts about this team in the offseason, Kaynen?
Yeah, when you look at the Commanders, some of the needs I see are running back. Brian Robinson has been good, but if you could get a guy like Aaron Jones, because he has so much cap space, that would be awesome. I see holes on their line with their tackles and their left guard. Their center, Biadish, he's awesome. He's been really good. And the right guard, Cosme, he's been good. So I think you can leave those guys alone. But the rest of the line needs an upgrade. And to pair it what you said, the edge rushers. Fowler, he is a free agent. If you can't get him back, maybe he finds a better deal somewhere else or it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. Pick up guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, steal them from your divisional rival, or Matthew Judon even. Those would be some decent pickups in the edge rushing for that Commanders defense that needs help.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm glad you mentioned the offensive line. I'm so used to the Commanders, who had such a great offense this year. I'm just, know that their defense was so bad. I didn't even think about offensive needs. But you're absolutely right, Keenan. They definitely need some offensive line help. And there was definitely times where it seemed like, Jaden Daniels was kind of running for his life. And, he's a great quarterback, but you don't want him to get hurt. You do eventually want to build a great offensive line, because he is a guy who, he does prefer to stay in the pocket and throw the ball. He only runs when he has to and when that's what the defense gives him. So, that's a great point, Keenan. If you can imagine what Jaden Daniels did, if he has even more time in the pocket and even better offensive line and even better receivers, I mean, I can't imagine what this guy's going to do. And, I mean, we've seen a guy like Lamar Jackson who won an MVP his second year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we've seen a guy like Jaden Daniels who, if his team's better and he could take an even step further in his development, there's every, reason why he can't be, an MVP candidate or even win the MVP headed into his second season next year. Obviously, it's still kind of early, but just because it's the first season of the first episode of the offseason show, we are, just for the fun, we're going to just give our way too early 2025 Super Bowl thoughts before any draft or free agency news. Just kind of some thoughts on where we think, the Super Bowl could be heading when we look at, this season, how it ended and where we're looking at these teams and how they stand right now. Before I give my thoughts, Keenan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's really hard not to see the Eagles making the Super Bowl again. But I do not think they're going to win. If I have to pick a team, I think it's got to be the Bills. I mean, they've come so close time and time again. Josh Allen's due for one. I don't know what I'm going to do if he doesn't get a Super Bowl. He's been just amazing. So if they have a good offseason and can put some pieces together that they're missing, I think the Bills can do it. They're so close.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Keenan. And I would love to pick the Bills, but as a Bills fan, I don't think psychologically or emotionally I could ever predict the Bills to win the Super Bowl. I think I'm just going to always have to predict them not to win the Super Bowl until they actually do. But that's a great pick, Keenan. And, when I look at, the teams right now, I'm not going to pick the Chiefs. I don't think they're going to get to a 4th straight Super Bowl. Only the Buffalo Bills in the 1990s could do that. But when I look at that, I don't think the Chiefs are going to go. And honestly, I feel like it's got to be the Ravens. I mean, what more do the Ravens need? I mean, they're even talking about the Ravens adding some more receiver help. I mean, the Ravens have every single recipe. I mean, they were a 2-point conversion catch away from being potentially an overtime game with the Bills. So they're right there. And I mean, each year they're getting closer and closer. Last year, 2 years ago, they made the AFC Championship game. Lamar Jackson got some playoff wins, but he didn't necessarily play great. Now, this year, Lamar Jackson actually played great in the playoffs, but his teammates just came up short. Now, I feel like now you got Derrick Henry. Lamar Jackson proved he can play and get it done and play clutch in the playoffs. So I feel like with that team and with their defense, with Kyle Hamilton and some of their other pieces, Zay Flowers is only getting better. I feel like the Baltimore Ravens now are going to go all in next season. So I think the Baltimore Ravens right now, I know I might change it by the time we get to September, but I'm going to say right now I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens. And then when I look at the NFC, I want to pick the Commanders because they were just so close and they got all this salary cap. But it's just like when you look at the Eagles, their team is just so good. They don't really have many holes in. They got so many young players that, they're going to lose some players, but they're going to kind of just reload instead of having to rebuild because a lot of their free agents, they pretty much already got young guys who are very talented already in the wings, ready to replace them. So I'm going to say, it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens against the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to repeat. And we're going to have another back-to-back Super Bowl champion. And then we're going to be talking about a three-peat again, but instead it's going to be with the Philadelphia Eagles.
That would be awesome to see.
And then, finally, to end the show, we'll have one more topic. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers' potential landing spots. We obviously, this is a topic that we're going to be talking about, more in depth as the offseason goes around. But just as initial thoughts, they were talking about teams that may be potentially interested. Obviously, the Jets are going to move on. Honestly, Kaynen, I said this before on ETB. I feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin are the perfect fit. I feel like Mike Tomlin's the coach who has the, the cachet, the ego, and, the mentality and, the no nonsense to where Aaron Rodgers could come in. And Aaron Rodgers is not going to be able to mess up the locker room. He's not going to be able to take control or be able to do what he wants to do. Mike Tomlin's the one coach that Aaron Rodgers will respect enough to be able to have basically Mike Tomlin kind of put him in his place and treat him like a normal teammate instead of like the Jets where they basically let him run the franchise, and you see where that got him. Aaron Rodgers needs someone that he can respect enough that he's going to listen to and that can kind of just let him be a quarterback and not kind of be a quarterback / GM. I mean, there's other teams like, the Raiders, with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll likes to, rebuild teams. Usually builds a decent defense, good running game. We probably could bring in Aaron Rodgers. They probably don't want to go with a rookie quarterback given Pete Carroll's age. So the Vegas Raiders, with that market, they could be an interesting match. We also got the Indianapolis Colts. Their head coach is on the hot seat. They have to make the playoffs. They got a lot of talent. It's just their quarterback situation has been holding them back. So maybe the Indianapolis Colts is a situation that maybe fit Rodgers. But right now, it looks like Rodgers wants to play in. In my opinion, it looks like the Steelers are the best fit. What are your thoughts, Kenny, on potential fits for Rodgers?
Yeah, I think the move that makes most sense is Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, they've been such a consistent team with Mike Tomlin as the coach. They're just missing a quarterback with Big Ben leaving. They haven't really filled that spot. They've tried to over and over again. They haven't really gotten it. Well, that would be the move that makes the most sense. I think the move that makes the best story is if Sam Darnold gets out of Minnesota, Aaron Rodgers heads over there to play for the Vikings, just like Brett Favre, and just completes the storyline. Because I mean, he already played for the Jets. It'd be interesting to see what he could do with the Vikings. I think that'd be really cool to see him throw passes to Jefferson and Addison. I mean, who wouldn't love to see that?
Yeah, that would be awesome, Kaden, and that'd be funny. I guess he would really fulfill the prophecy that Brett Favre set forth for him. That would be absolutely insane. I think the Vikings, would probably rather just, because of the chemistry, would probably rather franchise tag Darnold or go with McCarthy. But, I mean, if Sam Darnold wants to leave and they don't think McCarthy's ready coming back from his injury, I mean, Rodgers would be a guy that could come in and kind of be your bridge guy for a year. And, I mean, that would be interesting, for him to have the same exact teams and career path that Brett Favre have. But this is going to finish up our show this week. We're obviously going to do the same thing next week. We're going to break down any NFL breaking news. We're obviously going to do some more offseason breakdowns of more NFL teams. So definitely stay tuned. We're going to be bringing you the show every single week for basically the next 6 or 7 months, Kaynen, until the NFL season starts again. When we start doing our NFL season previews at the end of the season. But make sure to be following the show on all social medias at TFB Forecast, ETB. And definitely make sure to stay tuned for our shows. And if you like all other sports like MMA, baseball, check out our other shows as well on ETB Network. Thanks, everybody, and I can't wait to see you guys next week.